Bakla!
Hi everyone, welcome to Buckle Up Podcast. I'm Natalia Earl and I'm a certified business and life coach that loves talking to people. I'm fascinated by humans and how our brain works. What is it that makes a decision good or bad, and how does that decision ultimately shape our path and destiny? Everyone loves to talk about success, but what about the flip side? How about adversity, failure? It's such a big and often necessary part of life, and it's simply unavoidable. So I invite you to join me on this inspiring, honest, unpolished interview show with breathtakingly real conversations that go deep on setbacks and hardships that are part of the puzzle that ultimately lead to growth, discovery of inner greatness, and what makes us resilient.
Bakla!
Grab your helmet and buckle up, people. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but what a ride it will be. Today's guest, January Donovan, is the founder of the Wholeness School and the Wholeness Coaching School. She's a #1 best-selling author, an entrepreneur, and a mother of 8 children. She has over 20 years of experience training women. January had a bold dream to build a school designed to train women with the practical skills to manage their lives. She spent 15 years training women for free before realizing that in order to reach millions, she had to learn to build a business and do so while prioritizing her family. The business grew from zero to a multimillion-dollar company, reaching 40 countries in under 3 years and landing her the title as one of Forbes Magazine's top coaches. She then went on to found the Wholeness Coaching School, where she teaches men and women to build their own coaching business using mindset and skill set training to design every part of their life. She co-founded the men's school with her husband and quickly expanded to the women's school in Español. January believes that life without skill is hard. Skills give us choices. We suffer unnecessary overwhelm, stress, and anxiety simply because we are undertrained. We battle feeling like a failure when in reality the world has failed to prepare us. We can no longer afford to hand over a generation of men and women who doubt their worth and give up on who they were created to be. We cannot afford a life without training. We need to skill up. It's incredible because as a mother of 8, how do you build a business while prioritizing your family as well? Because as a woman, we come with lots of responsibilities when it comes to a family. So how did you do it?
Well, it's a great question. I think it's a constant how. What I mean by that is I don't think it's just one thing. I think, I always say we teach women how to fish, and then you strategically design every season of your life, because I find that there's new skills that need to be learned with every season. With every child, people are like, you're an expert. You've got 4 kids, 5 kids. I'm like, you're never an expert. The skills I needed with 4 kids is different than a skill I needed with 5 kids. And all the different things. So I would say that how is that I train myself. I tell women, I'm like, I have no superpower. I get up early, I study, I train, I set my life very intentionally. I design every part of my life. I'm constantly developing my skill set. And I think it does sort of create harmony in your life. It does make it easier. I think life is hard when we are underskilled. In the women's school, we talk about we're overwhelmed when we're underskilled. We just don't know how. It's like you can't expect yourself to do, a gymnastic performance when you've never been taught how to tumble, how to jump. It's the same thing with life and being a woman. I think women today are so undertrained. And on top of that, there's irrational pressure of perfection, of proving ourselves, on top of the fact that we're undertrained. And this is why we have so many women who don't like themselves, who are burnt out, who are stressed, who are falling apart. And I tell women, I said, is it your fault when nobody ever showed you how?
Right.
And it isn't. I tell women, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility for the life it's the only life you have. So you have to train up.
And I love when you talk about how skills give us choices.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times, people will look at someone professional, they'll be like, oh, you were born with that skill, like you have a gift, and not realizing how much work goes behind the scene in developing that skill. Have
Yes.
you come across that throughout your
All day long.
coaching? Yeah.
I always say, I said, these skills are born of tears.
Mm.
They are, and they're not, when you're developing a muscle in the gym, it hurts, right? Because you go in there and you're conditioning. And it's the same thing with a skill. And I tell women all the time, knowing does not equal being. Just because I know about boundaries, just because I know how to hold my man accountable in my mind, that doesn't mean I've been conditioned to train myself on how to do it. It's like reading a book about gymnastics and being like, yeah, I think I know how to tumble. Is big difference in going there and training yourself to tumble every day. And that's what I mean by training, is that, skills give us choices to design a beautiful life. On the contrary, life is really hard without skills. And, if you really think about it, how do women today have to make the most important decisions of their life without decision-making skills? Really think about that. We don't know how to make decisions in our life. It's not like we go to school to say that in the women's school, there's 3 types of decisions. Not all decisions are equal. We make 35,000 decisions a day. And we don't have training on decision-making skills. What kind of friends we need to find. When do we need to, walk out from a friendship? What do we love? What do we not love? How should we design our day? These are decisions that are, as a skills that are so necessary for our peace of mind.
Yeah.
How do we build a business? A lot of times women want to build a business. And I say, listen, building a business, if we don't build the foundation of someone with basic skill set, business is going to feel like a roller coaster. It is. Because business without boundaries is going to be burnout. Business without managing our mind is mental exhaustion or emotional command. Business without learning how to pivot, one of our pivoting skills. Life is business, always constantly moving. Business, you're learning to build a business without knowing how to be firm and tender. That's a skill set that we teach. How do you become firm, but also tender in your delivery? These are so important. And I just feel like, why are we not taught this, Natalia?
I know.
And I think women are suffering for it. And that's what I find is that, how are we suffering for it? Women are competing and comparing. They're looking at each other and they feel insecure and they feel like a failure. And it's all women, and that's number one. It's a prison to feel like you're competing, comparing. We can't even see each other.
Yeah.
Number
Or
two,
celebrate each other,
yeah. So our self-image is the opinion that we hold of ourselves. You have an opinion that you hold of yourself in every parts of your life. I'm just a bad mom. I'm really good at soccer. Or, I'm just ugly, right?
Mm.
We actually have opinions of who we are and who we're not. But the problem is that we don't always know it, but we live it. I'm not thinking there that I'm like, oh, I just think I'm really just not a good mom. We don't always have language for the image that we hold of ourselves. And here's the problem I tell women is that our self-image was developed growing up. Somebody told us, you're just good at this. You're just bad at this. You're just perfect. You just, and so the opinion that we hold of ourselves are oftentimes have been inherited by other people's opinion of us. But it's been compounded through the years. Oh, my ex-boyfriend thought I was this. My aunt thought I was this. But the problem is that we don't know how to actually receive other people's opinion of us. Right? I have an 8, she was 8 at that point, and we were training women. I was training her to go to school, and I knew kids who always have opinion, and so we sat and I trained her to respond to other people's opinion of her. And sure enough, a month later, we forgot about it, and she's like, I was like, how's school? She's like, well, I've got this kid who's making fun of me. I was like, oh, you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm okay, mom. I told him his opinion of me is not my opinion of me. Totally fine. This is my 8-year-old daughter. I'm like, I teach grown women that for years and years, because here's the thing. The way we teach self-image, it's like, it's the image that you have inherited, that I've inherited, we've inherited, have been neurologically wired. Literally, we have 100 billion neurons in our brain, and they basically wire together and they become hardwired. Like, I know that this is a calculator because Somebody through the process of repetition told me it was a calculator. It's now hardwired. If I tell you, okay, Natalia, this is a banana, you're like, okay, January, it's not a banana. It's why? Because it's like a language. And so if I grew up when my mom says, you're always so awful we're so awful with men. So that becomes the image that we hold of ourselves. It's neurologically wired. What does that mean? It means that even though we want to change it, it's like a wiring. It's like, I don't want to be that person who feels like she's always self-doubt. Well, it's literally a physical wiring in our brain. So what we teach in the women's school is that we have to rewire the image that we hold of ourselves that are no longer serving us. And it's a process of, we call it the rewire formula, where you have to be, you have to replace it, you have to repeat it, and you have to actually protect it. I think that, a lot of times we go through midlife crisis because we haven't processed our life every step of the way. And we haven't taken a step back and say, do I like who I am? Do I not like who I am? What do I really want? What do I do not want? Am I fulfilled? Does this, we are in jobs we don't like and we hate it. Bodies we hate. Marriages we are, feel unfulfilled. Family life that stresses us out. And simply because nobody showed us to design that part of our life. It's amazing. I'm writing a book right now, redefining success for women. And one of the things that I highlight is the distinction between what success looks like and what success feels like. It's very different. We think of success as the fame, the fortune, the money, the prestige, but what does that feel like? Because right now, a lot of people who seem to be successful doesn't feel successful when they're stressed or burnout, their life is falling apart. We have to bring clarity to almost how we condition women to say, go, 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 go. This is what success is. You have to go for this. You have to achieve this. And at the same time, women who've said, you know what, I want to give up a life of success. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to choose the unsuccessful life. And so they're home, they're with the kids, and they're giving 100%, just like the woman who's working, and they're unfulfilled. Right? They wake up and they're like, something's missing in my life. I don't really like it. I mean, I love being a mom, but it's chaotic, it's stressful, and there's something missing. And I feel like I'm wasting part of the unsuccessful woman who gave up success for fulfillment still is unfulfilled. The successful woman who feels like this is my ticket to fulfillment comes to realize when she achieves the things that she's achieved, she remains unfulfilled. What's the problem? The way we define success in America, in the Western world. Behind every skill are tears. Yes. Behind every, wiring are failures and feeling inadequate and incompetent, insecure, and you wrestle. And this is also one of the things that we do very intentionally and very hard. We go all in, is that we train women that their worth is unconditional. Our worth is never external. What I mean by that your value is irreplaceable and unrepeatable because God made you. Your DNA, your trillions of cells, and your unique combination is unrepeatable. That makes you a rare human being, which makes you extremely valuable. The problem is that most women equate their value on their performance and what they produce and the perfection and the possession. We call it the poisonous P, and the prestige and the power. So they equate their value based on everything external. And which is why when they have it, they still feel like they're not good enough, because nothing replaces us understanding that our value is unconditional. But that's a rewiring. That's something we have to rewire in our brain. And that's what we train women. I said, listen, your worth is unconditional. It's irreplaceable and repeatable. You have to literally say that 1,000 times over, replace it so that a guy comes and criticizes you, your boss comes and criticizes you, you fail in your business, whatever, because there's everything in between external. It doesn't ever change the fact that you understand from a deep core level that your worth never changes with anything external. Do you know how many women have never been taught that their worth is unconditional? I can tell you, I've trained thousands. I mean, at this point, we're hundreds of thousands, we're in 40 countries. And it's when I tell them about the fact their worth is unconditional, it's almost like a foreign language. But at the same time, the walls come down, the tears come down, and saying, well, meaning I don't have to prove myself, that all these years I've been hustling, exhausted. You're telling me, January, that my worth is unconditional and doesn't ever change regardless of my opinion and I'm saying, yes, that's the truth. I mean, what qualifies something that's valuable? It's rarity. A diamond,
Right.
right? Think about, some of this um, diamond that it cannot be repeatable. You're the most unrepeatable person, every person with potential, with a unique DNA that makes you, from a very scientific perspective, irreplaceable, valuable. And you have to stand behind that so that you're
Yes.
not living according to what everyone else thinks you need to be. But at some point, the self image that we were developed, that we grew up, that maybe served us at one point in life, but no longer, has to converge with, understanding that our worth is unconditional. And then when we understand that, now we can change the image that we hold ourselves based on the fact that our worth is unconditional. We walk you through a scientific process. This is really why this training.
Also special. We bring something different to the table. Stop comparing yourself to other people and be your authentic self and always stay true to yourself. And that's when I really feel that success really happens.
Yeah, and I find, Natalia, that when I tell women, well, you can, get rid of comparison, it's a habit.
Mm,
It's so habitual. They don't even know they're doing it. They walk in the room and they're sizing women. Have you ever walked in the room and you can tell women are looking at, they don't know it's happening, but automatically doors are shut. A woman doesn't even realize it's a wound that she's carried all her life, because all her life she's having to prove herself. And so she walks habitually, just checking out other women, thinking she's better. And it's so habitual, it's so subconscious. She's not aware she's doing it. That's the problem, is that you're not aware you're doing it, but it's hurting you.
yeah.
And it's putting divisions. And loneliness is an international crisis in a social media hyper-connected world. We are not interconnected because we're not actually going deep, and we have walls in our relationship that we're not actually having deep connections. And the fact that we don't like ourselves, we don't have a dream, and we don't like our life. We put walls to protect ourselves from the fact that I don't want you to see that I don't actually like me. It's got to change. And that's what this work is about.
Right. And a lot of people like to turn it around and point fingers and blame others, right, for their actions. People are not owning it too.
Yeah.
You gotta own
Because it
it
hurts
too.
to own it. I
Yeah.
think it's easier to blame someone than to own up the fact that, you know, you messed up or you're not the woman you want to be. But it's the first step to taking responsibility.
Mm,
It's the first step to overcoming regret. A life of regret is to say, I'm responsible. Maybe it's not my fault. Maybe the conditions that were placed on me. I had a bad mom, alcoholic dad, whatever. We can be a victim to our circumstance, or we could find victory in our circumstance. And that's really, that's a way of thinking and a
mhm.
way of training women to habitually say, I'm going to find victory in my wound, that my wounds become the compass towards our contribution. We're not a victim to, we don't have to be.
Right.
We're all wounded.